You know how sometimes you get the big picture, the headlines, but you feel like you're missing, well, the real story? What it was like for people actually there.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we're trying to do today. We're zeroing in on the end of the Cold War.
Okay. A huge topic.
Huge.
Yeah.
But we're not just doing the usual high-level view, the Reagan-Gorbachev handshakes.
Right. So what's the angle?
We're looking at it through the eyes of a specific person,
Oh.
a U.S. Army nuclear weapons technician.
Oh, wow. Okay. Stationed in West Germany, right?
Exactly. Our main source is Jeff Woodward's memoir, Last of the Glowworms.
Glowworms, we'll get to that. And you also looked at some other stuff.
Yeah, some online discussions, info from the Pritzker Military Museum and Library, Jeff's own website, just to fill things out a bit.
Cool. So the mission for this deep dive is basically, what was it like for those guys handling the nukes when the Cold War started winding down? And what did that big treaty, the INF Treaty, actually mean on the ground?
Precisely. Understanding the human element behind these massive geopolitical shifts.
Okay, let's start with the INF Treaty then. We hear these names thrown around, but like, what did it do?
Well, it was signed back in December '87, Reagan and Gorbachev. And it was a pretty big deal.
How so?
It basically eliminated an entire class of nuclear and conventional missiles, everything with a range between 500 and 5,500 kilometers.
Just gone, wiped off the map.
Pretty much
Yeah.
gone, a whole category. One source called it a step leading away from the threat of catastrophe, which, sounds about right.
Yeah, no kidding. Leading away from catastrophe. That definitely puts it in perspective. So this treaty is the backdrop for Jeff Woodward's story.
It is. He joined the Army and became a MOS 55G, that's a nuclear weapons tech,
Yeah.
starting in '89. So right as this treaty is kicking in.
And what did a 55G do? It wasn't just guarding.
Oh, no. His memoir makes it clear. It was hands-on maintenance, handling the warheads themselves, even nuclear artillery shells.
The glowworms.
Those are the ones. He calls them the glowworms.
It's such a strange, almost innocent name for something so devastating. Gives you that bottom-up view, I guess, seeing how the treaty actually played out for the technicians.
Exactly that. Forget the grand strategy for a minute. This is about the day-to-day reality for someone whose job was those weapons right when things were changing dramatically.
And he was in Pirmasens, West Germany.
Yep. U.S. military base there. And his book, well, paints a really interesting picture. It's not all just, DEFCON alerts and tension.
Right. I saw a review mentioning it reads almost like a travelogue sometimes.
It kind of does. He talks about his duties, sure, but also traveling around Europe. Parisian nightclubs, German punk bars.
While being responsible for nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Enjoying German beer, listening to Metallica, making friends with locals, and then, doing routine maintenance on nukes.
That contrast is just, wow. It really shows you these were young guys living their lives, even with this immense, almost unthinkable responsibility hanging over them.
It really does. That kind of psychological compartmentalization must have been intense.
So, okay, the INF Treaty happens. Big changes. And Woodward's job changes too.
Operation Silent Echo.
That's it, Operation Silent Echo. That was the actual codename for the mission to disarm and pull U.S. nukes out of West Germany, Italy, Greece, Turkey, even South Korea.
So the direct result of the INF Treaty.
The direct, boots-on-the-ground result, and Woodward was right there doing it.
The review mentioned some really specific details he shares, like really tangible stuff.
Oh yeah, he talks about using like a simple spanner wrench to take the nose cone off a warhead.
Spanner wrench? Seriously?
Seriously, and handling grounding straps, the procedures, it's these little, almost mundane details that make it so real. It wasn't some magic button, it was guys with tools.
Yeah, it grounds the whole idea of disarmament, doesn't it? Makes it less abstract.
And he explains the technical stuff really clearly, apparently. Makes it accessible. You realize these incredibly complex, dangerous things were being handled by people using pretty ordinary tools. Incredible. Okay, so beyond the handling, what about the security? Keeping these things safe before they were removed. The Weapons Access Delay System, WADs. Sounds serious.
Oh, it was deadly serious.
Listen.
Designed to be. From his descriptions and what we found online, these bunkers were fortresses. Reinforced concrete, covered in earth, often pyramid shaped.
And the WADs itself.
It was layered. First, razor wire that could drop down like a blanket, just instantly cover the area.
Like a trap.
Exactly. And then more razor wire, spring-loaded, at the entrance to just seal it off completely if someone got that far.
Man, that's like movie stuff.
Pretty much. And then there was the gas.
Gas. What kind of gas?
Well, the specifics aren't totally clear. Woodward mentions the MPs, the military police, describing it as something that would eat the oxygen.
Eat the oxygen, that's chilling.
Yeah. Stark image. The idea was if the physical barriers were breached, the gas would kill any intruders left inside.
Grim. There was some online chatter about what it could have been, right? And that incident in Kriegsfeld?
Right, at the 619th ordinance. Some kind of malfunction involving a white powder adds another layer of mystery, maybe danger, even to the safety systems.
And these WOD systems, they just left them there.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
When the U.S. Army closed the depot, the system remained. The Germans maintain it now as a Cold War museum. You can actually go see it.
Wild. Walking through a place designed to kill intruders who were trying to get at nukes.
It's a physical reminder, isn't it, of how high the stakes were.
And part of why the security was so extreme was maybe the age of some weapons?
That seems right. Some older artillery shells, maybe some warheads, didn't have the more modern safety features like remote destruction capabilities.
Stuff that came later, in the 90s.
Exactly. So systems like WAIDs, these really robust physical and lethal barriers, were absolutely critical back then. Plus, these weapons had the highest security rating, protection level 1,
Meaning?
meaning lethal force was authorized to defend them, no questions asked.
So you have these really young guys like Woodward joining at 17.
Yeah, just kids, really.
Handling these incredibly dangerous things, protected by these almost unbelievable systems, and then they have to take them apart because the world is changing. That's a lot.
It's immense. And Woodward himself, he seems like an interesting guy beyond just the job. Tried to connect with the locals, right? Learn German.
Yeah, the book mentions that. He seemed culturally sensitive, ended up marrying a German woman, lived there for years before coming back to the U.S.
It adds another dimension. These weren't just cogs in the machine. They were people experiencing this unique moment in history, interacting with the world around them.
Although one reviewer did point out that maybe the book lacks some of the broader historical context.
That's fair. It's very focused on his personal experience. The base, the travel, Operation Silent Echo.
So less about the Berlin Wall falling or German reunification or the Soviet Union collapsing, which were all happening around then.
Right. Those huge events aren't really the focus.
Yeah.
The reviewer suggested maybe his later deployment to the Gulf War overshadowed some of that, or just his immediate focus was his job and his life there.
Which makes sense for a personal memoir, I suppose. It's not a history textbook.
Exactly. And what it does give you is that invaluable ground-level view. He really highlights the importance of the invisible men and women, as he puts it, the techs, the support crews, the people who made deterrence work but are rarely seen.
It definitely makes you think about how history feels different depending on where you're standing.
For sure. And his interest clearly didn't stop when he left the service. His website, his blog, he's still digging into this stuff.
Yeah, saw that. Writing about old missiles, Soviet systems, even that Janus war game thing, he stayed engaged.
Deeply. Which makes sense, given what he lived through.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it's been fascinating getting this glimpse into the Cold War's end from such a specific human perspective. Woodward's story really brings home what the INF Treaty meant for the people tasked with carrying it out.
Yeah, from daily life in West Germany, the Metallica and the beer, right through to the technical, potentially dangerous work of Operation Silent Echo, handling those glowworms.
And understanding the security around them, the W system. It paints a vivid picture of the anxieties and precautions of that era.
It does. And while it's one person's story, it really stands for the countless others who are part of this massive, but often unseen, undertaking, both maintaining and then dismantling these arsenals.
It really makes you pause and consider the scale of it all, doesn't it? The Cold War, the shift away from the brink, and how it wasn't just about leaders and treaties, but about individuals like Woodward.
Absolutely. Which kind of leaves us with a thought, maybe for everyone listening. Think about that human element. The people, often very young, who managed, maintained, and eventually took apart weapons of almost unimaginable power. Consider those unseen roles, the invisible men and women, and how their actions, their daily work, shaped world events in ways we rarely acknowledge.
It definitely encourages you to look beyond the headlines, maybe seek out more of these personal stories from that time, get a richer sense of what that era was really like.